In our very first episode of Social Objects, we talk with Dr. Chris Berg of Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design. We dive into what it takes to become and be a part-time wildlife photographer and a full-time adventurer. Dr. Berg demonstrates how an informal passion can become a key to connection and creativity. Welcome to Social Objects, the podcast where we dive into the lives and shared stories of the objects we make, use, and cherish. Well, here we go. Welcome to Social Objects. If you could start by introducing yourself and the object you've brought to share with us today.
Well, thank you first for having me. My name is Chris Berg, and I teach in the liberal arts department. Been with Rocky Mount for about a decade now. And the object I have is something that I've created. It's a photograph, and it's of three flamingos.
Can you describe your photo in a bit more detail? We will have an image on the screen, but walk us through the composition, any physical characteristics that you intentionally captured or any surprises you captured.
That's an interesting way to begin because the image, in many ways, it shouldn't have happened. So I'm thinking this was the end of August 2023. And we had a hurricane come through the central part of the state, and this is Florida, so just north of Tampa. There was an unexpected group of visitors that came to the West Coast, and we weren't really sure where they came from. Did they come from Cuba? Did they come from further south, or did they come from Mexico? So the issue when you live in the Gulf Coast, extending from Mexico, Texas, all the way through Florida on the west coast of Florida, it's a migratory path. So you get different species that come up through Central America into Mexico and then fan out. And you also get them going through the Lesser and Greater Antilles up through the Caribbean on the opposite side and then kind of fan out through the Atlantic seaboard. So we have two different paths, and Florida kind of falls between both in many ways. So oftentimes you can see birds the size of your thumb that have literally traveled 1,000 miles nonstop, not having anywhere to go, but that's part of their life and living and moving from a breeding ground to maybe a wintering location. So I had never seen American flamingos before, and someone had posted outside of a hotel on St. Pete Beach, like, look what I saw on my morning walk. And of course, it made the rounds quickly. By that night, everybody in Florida knew that we had, I don't know, 30, 40 American flamingos. And they were outside outside congregated of this hotel. And people were coming from Miami, people were coming from Jacksonville. My friend and I, and a friend of his, they're both professional wildlife bird photographers. I am not. This is just something I've happened to meet them in the course of things. I said, look what's up there. And they're like, we're going. And I said, okay, well, how about we split up? You go to one location, I'll go to another. So I went to where they were originally, nothing to be found. And he was at another location. He said, well, I see one. And then he texted again, I see two. Wait, there's now three. So they're in this lagoon off of a barrier island, which is probably 10 miles south of where I am. But by car, I mean, this could easily turn to a 30-minute trip. And it's already into the evening. So we don't have a lot of daylight. And I'm trying to get back because we have three there, which eventually turned into more. But I didn't know that yet. All I know is that as I'm getting closer and getting updates, they're no longer there. They're moving further inland, and I'm like, oh gosh, got to get there. So by the time I get there, I've heard that they've already moved out of the lagoon and have moved into an interior lagoon, which is really difficult to get to. So they just happen to come out to the car, and they have everybody with them, and they're just dying of heat because the temperatures had been insane.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally have just arrived, and I'm saying, which lens should I take? Would a smaller one work or whatever? And they're like, no, no, get what you have this, so get that together. As soon as I put everything together, I'm like looking for them, they're gone. So I'm like, okay. One of the people who was with him was still hanging around, so we start walking the long way to go find him. Can't find him. I said, they must have gone the other way. I didn't see. That's another 5-minute walk the other way. So I walk all the way that way. I don't see them there either. I'm like, where on earth did they go? And he's pinging me on the phone. He said, here's my location. I go,
Hmm.
what? Where exactly is this? He goes, we're on the far side of the lagoon. I go, I get that. How'd you get there? He goes, we took the path. Well, Kat, there are like 5, 6, 7, 8 paths, and some of them crisscross each other. So I'm like, what path was the path you took? And he's like, show me where you're at. And at this point, I am drenched in sweat. My heart rate is super elevated. I'm feeling sick at this point because 45 minutes had elapsed and we probably had 10 minutes of sun left. I can't for the life of me. And I'm getting frustrated, but I'm also at the point where I'm like, well, maybe I won't see him. I won't see them tonight. Maybe I'll see them tomorrow. Good thing I stuck it out because droves of people came the following day. Nothing.
Oh, wow.
So that evening was the evening, and I happened to be passing as I turned around the second or third time. I mean, I'm carrying all this equipment. Imagine just having like 20, 25 pounds of a rucksack on your back.
Hmm.
This heat was just, it was just, when you're sweating off your eyebrows, you know that you're hot. And I'm just trudging along. And a woman passed me with this massive, massive lens. And all she says is, they're, the flamingos are in the interior. I said, I know. I said, I'm trying to find a path. She goes, follow me. I didn't say a word. I followed her. So
Sketchy.
as we're
Okay.
going through the mangroves, she said, watch out for snakes. I said, snakes? I said, what kind of snakes? I should have asked what kind. She goes, oh, rattlesnakes. I said, are you kidding me? There's rattlesnakes on the berry. She goes, they're everywhere. I go, you have got to be kidding me. So we're going up through this mangrove that goes up to about your knees. And I'm doing my best to look down, but not look down and try to mirror where she's walking.
Hmm.
We literally get to the edge of this interior mangrove lagoon swamp, whatever you want to call it. Literally, people are on the other side. They're pushing parts of it down so we can get through. Thankfully, we got through. I no more put up my tripod. I don't have anything left. I literally have everything there. All I'm doing is leaning forward on it, and people are just walking by. I can't even talk. I have no water, no nothing with me. I look to my left, and the mangrove is pretty tall. The sun's gone. And light in photography is everything.
Yep.
Not always, but it's generally everything. That's your number one consideration. So I'm like, the light's gone. I look up ahead and I see my friend in the water laying down as they do. The pros will do it. I learned a long time ago my body doesn't accommodate that. So I'm happy to be on my tripod in this nasty water that had a lot of hidden dangers in it too, come to find out. And I'm literally just leaning on it and I'm trying to take photos and I'm probably 50 yards away.
Hmm.
And he's texting me, and one of our mutual friends actually passes me like he's like, I got everything I needed. I'm good to go. I'm like, wow. I literally have nothing. I don't have that type of equipment, so my shutter speed had to be super low because
Hmm.
my ISO, which is part of the exposure triangle for those who understand that. So you have your aperture, your ISO, and your shutter speed, and you kind of add and subtract from one, and by doing that, you have to add and subtract from another. So
Hmm.
you have these three variables in order to get an exposure, or at least a preferably correct exposure. And I texted him. I said, I can't get the images. I said, I literally, because of the lens that I have, not the camera, but the lens,
Hmm.
I was on a 200 to 600 zoom, and my aperture was at 6.3. I needed to be down like f4 or even lower. And that means the aperture widens like an iris on the eye. So I needed it to be wide to let more light in,
Hmm.
and I couldn't do it. So I texted him back and I said, I can't do it. I said, I'm shot. Everything's done here. I said, I'm just gonna wait here for you. And he said, change your metering mode. I go, what do you mean change your metering mode? And he goes, you're probably on multi-metering. He goes, change it to single point. I said, I never thought about that. So I changed it to single point. Everything now became possible.
Wow.
So because he took the time in the midst of laying in this mucky water, doing everything, people are just excited and happy. It was
Hmm.
amazing just to be there. my spirits perked up, and I changed the metering mode. I was able to drop the shutter down. Everything all of a sudden came alive. And I took several hundred images. This is just one of the images out of several hundred. And literally the background, even though it looks like it's a purely black backdrop,
Hmm.
it was a mangrove. There was enough separation that I did darken it probably by one stop of light. And it gives you more of that dramatic effect. But the colors, honestly, when you look at the colors, I did in Lightroom, there is a calibration tab, and I did adjust the blue slider on the calibration tab.
Okay.
Everything else that's exactly what it was. And a lot of people had a hard time believing that's exactly what the image looked like. I
Yeah.
didn't know about this until later because that night driving back, I literally thought I had to pull on the side of the road no less than half a dozen times. I was on the phone talking to people because I was literally so sick that I couldn't see straight. My friend, when he walked in, his wife said, "Do I need to take you to the hospital?" We were worse for wear after that excursion, and he went back the following day and the following
Oh
day,
no.
hoping to come back. But literally, that first night was the golden opportunity. So I know that was a very long-winded explanation of how did I get this image, and a little bit of that backstory.
Yeah, so trudging through the jungle, Indiana Jones style, maybe snakes, no water. Do you carry a water bottle now on your excursions or?
I still don't. What I do is that I'll take one of those big, thermos type 32 ounce,
Mhm.
and I will drink about three-quarters of it, and I'll leave a quarter. I should carry two. Honestly, I probably should just carry 64 ounces. And I guess it's just old habits. And then when you're carrying a lot of gear, sometimes you forget. And I have done that where I've actually forgotten my water. Or on those times I have made a second smaller one, I forgot it on the counter or something. I've forgotten my lenses before. I've forgotten shoes. I mean, you literally have to have, like a trunk full of additional clothing and whatever else to kind of keep it all together because it's very easy to forget batteries. I think that's a photographer's worst nightmare that when you thought you changed a battery and then you turn your camera on and it has like 5% or it's dead and you go, I changed it.
Mhm.
Oh, I forgot to actually pull the batteries out and actually put them back in. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So batteries, always carry extra batteries. Pro
Listen,
tip.
it is a pro tip. Batteries, water. I also love that you followed a stranger into the middle of nowhere. That might be a red flag. I don't
Yeah.
know. But
Yeah.
do you feel like the community is good, safe? I mean, you clearly felt safe. I can tell you as you're telling this story, I'm sitting there like so not relatable. Like I enjoy photography, but as soon as someone's like, "Okay, we're gonna trudge through this and there's snakes," I'm out. Like I'm in museums, right? Climate controlled. So,
My judgment at times is questionable. I don't have much to say when people say, "Why'd you do that?" I go, good question. I don't know. In hindsight, as I often tell students, hindsight, oh boy, hindsight's 2020.
mhm,
It gives you a little bit of time to sit and reflect and consider something. In that moment, I considered nothing. Literally, as I'm walking, I'm just like, follow exactly where they're walking and
mhm,
follow that path. And they did it with such assurance too. Sometimes I think when people have that type of confidence
mhm,
and charisma, and you're like, hey, they honestly should know what they're doing. And then later you go, they didn't have a clue. Yet I confidently followed them in that same
mhm,
way. But yeah, I definitely, and even walking out of that lagoon, it was dark at that point, and there was just a handful of us. And there's different ways that you can get into it. One of the ways that I could have gone into it, I wasn't about to walk in water that was deeper than waist deep,
mhm,
and it connects to the ocean. So we
mm-mm.
do get stuff. I mean, manatees come into this area, which can still scare the bejesus out of you. If you don't see something, all of a sudden you see this 8, 9 foot behemoth, like a submarine coming up for air,
Yep.
and it comes up next to you. Yeah, you freak out because you're like, it's missing a fin, but I thought that was a shark.
Mhm,
If something touches me in the water, I don't care if it's ankle deep, I'm going to make, a scene probably. So going up in the water that was waist deep, and it literally was because I went above my knee and I said, I can't take all this equipment in there because stuff is expensive and I'm a teacher. So I mean, I just can't sit there and replace things. As some of the people who I do this, I call it my hobby. For them, it's more of a profession and passion. They change out equipment and gear like it's going out of style. I'm like, I don't know how you can afford that. But again, these are people who are either they do it for a profession or they're retired and maybe they have those types of funds to do that. Me, I'm like, it took me forever to get this stuff. I'm protecting it as best as I can. So I'm not going to walk through potentially waist deep or deeper because again, it's next to the tides of things. If a boat comes through, you can get smacked by a small wave and be completely submerged. And water is not a friend, especially salt water. And if you have insurance, oftentimes they won't cover it because you put yourself in a predicament where you didn't need to be around salt water. So they're not going to cover that kind of thing.
That's wild. So I'm going to transition to, I don't know, having you put your lens of artist on, I guess, if you accept that title label. And you mentioned you took hundreds of photographs, and I'm wondering what led you to share this specific image of the hundreds you have.
I probably have 3 to 5. And I think anybody who does wildlife or even portraiture, you take hundreds for the very purpose of you're looking for very fractional moments in time. And oftentimes when you take that image and it may be a award winning or an image that a client just absolutely loves, when you take it, you often don't know that you took it. It's only when you actually go into that digital darkroom that you can actually see these were the sequences. Often when I look at these things, the memory I have presently is not the same as what I experienced at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting, kind of gray area. And we try to create it in a way that we try to replicate that. And I think any photographer does. That's kind of the idea behind it is that it becomes very creative, very interpretive. And you have the purists who believe that it should come out of camera as is, as in you do not touch anything. It should be as perfect as it can be.
Mm-hmm.
I don't subscribe to that. I think most photographers probably wouldn't. And I think that takes away a lot of the fun of it too, because this is digital. And even when you worked in film, I think of Ansel Adams and the idea of the concept of dodging and burning and, light brightening an area or darkening an area on purpose
Mm-hmm.
is part of that craft. And that's kind of how I see the work that I've done. So I have 3 to 5 out of that hundreds and hundreds. And there's times, Kat, where I've taken thousands of images and we call it a keeper rate, especially in
Mm-hmm.
wildlife or bird photography. And if you're keeping more than 10%, you're probably being too generous.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the people that I know, 3 to 5%, and I know some who are very, very critical, and it's like less than 1%. It's quite incredible.
Whoa.
So if you took 1,000 images, they keep 10, and it's not 10 of the same sequence. Like they'll choose one out of the sequence and maybe one out of another sequence. Doesn't mean they get rid of everything, but those don't like see the light of day, and for good reason. Especially like your really top level types. Me, I'm like, look at all these really excellent images. Oh yeah, they're good, and like that just hurts. Like, oh gosh, they said it was good.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you thought it was great. Oh no, it's good. It's good. And they're like, oh, that just hurts. It hurts right in my heart. I mean, that's the thing we don't want to hear when they just say it's good. You're like, oh gosh, I thought it was amazing. I mean, and that's the thing too when it comes to photography or art. And I would share this with anybody because I still feel this myself. It is amazing. It is amazing. It's incredible the things that we can do and the work that we have. The only person we should compete against, it's not others, is against ourselves. So if we're pushing ourselves a little bit forward, don't do anything to hold yourself back. We can be very self-critical. And I don't think anybody's more critical than we can be with ourselves. So give yourself that grace and be like, you know what? This was an amazing experience. Don't take away from the experience because that leads us to more in future work and experiences. You don't want to think that I'm not good enough. We hear enough of that. Forget from other people, from ourselves, because we always tend to think that we don't belong or we're not good enough at what we're doing. And as long as we're enjoying it, just keep going with it.
I can't agree more. I guess my follow-up, though, as you're talking about, photographers picking 10%, 3%, 1%, whatever of an image or a series of images, did you specifically study composition or how did you, like, I'm looking at this image and the composition's really balanced. Like, how did you learn that? Was it trial and error? Have you trained? How'd you get there?
I have no formal education. I have not taken photography courses. I did take like one of those I don't know what you call them, like one of those like 30-minute classes on like exposure and things
Mm-hmm.
like that, because I learned early on after buying a decent camera. I kind of live within the Sony ecosystem. For those who are photographers, they know what I'm talking about. Everybody's like Canon, and everything's Canon or everything's Nikon.
Mm-hmm.
For me, when I was getting into photography, probably about 6.5 years now, I've been really into it. The first 6 months, I bought a kind of like an entry type of camera, and I saw what other people were doing who had Sony cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing what I know now, I probably would not have gone with Sony just because the price tag associated with Sony and there's no secondary market. So if you want to buy used, it's very tough to find used equipment. Whereas Canon and Nikon, for instance, even Olympus is really coming back into the mirrorless camera market.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more affordability and availability. With Sony, there just isn't. And there's like a premium on these products. So part of me wishes I didn't go that route, but part of me is like, well, this is par for the course. And typically, when you stick with a system, you don't often move unless you, again, have the funds and ability to do that. Otherwise, you kind of stick with one. And honestly, all of them, from what I've seen, both of my friends, one uses Canon, one uses Nikon.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had this kind of talk. And you know what? At this point, they're all incredible. I think we split hairs of saying, well, Nikon is better than you and Sony's better. They're all good. It really comes down to you as the photographer. You know, that mind behind the actual tool.
Mm-hmm.
So these are tools that we use just like a paintbrush or anything else. It's a tool. It really comes down to the individual and what you can do with it. I've seen people do incredible things with very basic cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen people who have incredible cameras and lenses that shoot like their snapshots. Photographers speak of saying like you didn't put much thought into it, like it's a disposable camera.
Yeah.
So I've seen both sides of the spectrum there. And when it comes to things like how do you choose one image out of 100 or one out of 1,000,
Mm-hmm.
that I still struggle with it because the fact is that I often second guess my own. And just recently I've entered 2 or 3 different contests, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
and there's 2 or 3 people who are very good photographers. And when I say photographers, I typically mean wildlife or bird photography because that's kind of where I move.
Mm-hmm.
But all photographers have good eyes. And one who's quite a few years older than me, just has a lot of experience. I go to him all the time. And my other friend who's a professional. So I value their opinions. And oftentimes I'll send them several images of the sequence because they're like, I can't figure it out. They go, so you want to punt it to me and have me
Mm-hmm.
choose one? I said, exactly. So just choose one.
Yes.
And they go, no, we're not going to do that. You need to figure out the one that you want to submit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something too, for those who are interested in contests or anything that's competitive, don't submit something. And I'm not just telling your audience, but I'm telling myself at the same time, don't submit something because you think you're going to game the system or because that's what's in vogue or that's what sells right now.
Mm-hmm.
Do it because you're proud of it. Because I've actually had one image at least that's made a final round. And if it had won, I would have been happy, but there would have been a part of me that would have been, there would have been something about it that I would not have been completely happy with. And it's
Mm-hmm.
because I probably thought, oh, they're gonna go and they're gonna like this image. So it's really popular when you do like young birds and things like that in the nest. And
Mm-hmm.
I typically don't do that anymore. I did do it once, and then after that, I'm like, this is not really my type of photography too. So I don't feel like I'm being true to the intent of why I do what I do. Just like people do big macro scenes or close-ups. I kind of fall in between that. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the situation dictates. But I still struggle when it comes to how do I select? Because again, I have no formal training. And a lot of the people who I know, they don't have formal training either. Like they're not degreed or credentialed,
Mm-hmm.
but they have a natural talent that they continued and developed for any number of reasons. So if anything, it's really opened the world of creativity to me because I never found myself to be a creative individual. I think
Mm-hmm.
I was when I was younger. I think many of us probably were. And then you go through the formal US educational system and it kind of just gets pushed to the side
Yep.
or minimized because you need to be very good in English or now like STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. They
Hmm.
push a lot of that, and that was never I never excelled in things like that. So I'm like, where do I fit in here? And that part of that imagination and creativity just kind of went away.
Yeah.
So being at Rocky Mountain has really encouraged a lot of that. I go, well, gosh, I never thought that I could be creative in what I do. And as time has gone on, I definitely feel more of a connection to it
Hmm.
because it's something that I think you don't really master in that regard. You can master technical aspects of it, but the creative process, that's 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 something I think we're always chasing after, and that's a good thing.
Hmm.
I don't think we should ever get to that point where we go, I've mastered it. Well, if you mastered it, it's time to hang that up and maybe move on to something else. I don't think I'll ever do that with photography. It can get me up before dawn. It keeps me up until after dark. I do some astrophotography now. So there's a lot of opportunity. I even had a person, Kat, this is during COVID, and I was taking pictures of a boat that had shipwrecked off of a off another barrier island. And I just happened to see, and other people are walking by making comments, and I'm taking pictures of it at sunset. And this gentleman walks up to me and just starts talking with me. They had a drink in one hand and they're pointing out stuff to another, and they had a southern drawl, and I figured they weren't from around here.
Yep.
And he would leave and he would come back. He would leave and come back. And over the course of 45 minutes, it's almost dark. He comes over, and at this point, we've already shared some information with one another. He goes, Chris, he goes, I see you taking all these different images. You're doing this and doing that. He said, I think you're really good at what you do. And I said, well, how do you know that? He goes, because I can see how you're going about this whole process. And I said, well,
Yeah.
that's kind of weird to say. His name was Jody. And he had come down because his close friend of decades had just died.
Mm.
And he had come down from somewhere up in the South to visit them one last time. And he said they had passed away a day or two earlier. And again, this is on the tail end of COVID. So this
Hmm.
is 2020. And he said, I'd hate to ask. He said, but seeing you do this and everything, he said, would you take some pictures of me, like some portraits,
Oh.
either with the sun in the background or with the boat? And I said, Jody, I'd be happy to, but I have never taken a picture of a human being before. I said, I'm always doing wildlife and birds. He goes,
Hmm.
I'm sure it'll be great. Let's just do it. I said, okay. So I did. And I took these images, and he gave me his email and everything. I said, I sent it to him. He's like, I'm going to send you. He goes, do you like whiskey? And I said, oh, good grief. I said, of all the things I do drink, yes, I do. He said, I'm going to send you a bottle of my favorite when I get back. I said, you don't have to do that. He goes, this has been just a lovely experience. Thank you for doing this. I sent him those images, and then we parted. I sent him those images the next day. I did a basic edit on about a dozen of them. He confirmed that he got them. And
Hmm.
then I wrote him back about something later that day. I said, hope you got your flight, because he was leaving the next morning. I said, hope you got your flight and everything. And I never heard back.
Yeah.
So this is October. I get a text in December from another person who was nie- his niece's husband saying,
Okay.
I'm so and so. I am going through Jody's phone. Jody passed away a week after he got back. We just now
No.
found these images on here. I'm going to share them um with his mother. He had never had photos done of himself before. We don't have anything like this.
Oh.
And I looked at the messages that he sent you previous, and he goes, I agree, these are just incredible images. And I'd like to send you that. I said, I was happy to do so. We had an exchange back and forth a couple times. I said, please, you don't have to send anything. I said, I wondered if something,
Yeah.
why I hadn't heard back after the fact, because I said, I hope your flight went well and everything. It was
Yeah.
nice to meet you. Let me know. I wondered if he wanted me to do something specific with images, even though I'm not a good editor when it comes to stuff like that. But I never heard back. That has always stayed with me. I have a file of those images. I kept them uh, just as a reminder of that moment. Sometimes doing photography or any other type of creative act, sometimes it brings you into contact
Hmm.
with other people that you would otherwise never meet. And that's something, again, it'll be 5 years here that still comes to my mind. Anytime I'm in that general area, even though I haven't gone back to that beach since, when I'm still driving that area, if I'm going somewhere else and I'm near it, he comes to my mind.
Mm.
And just a lovely man, and come down to see his dying friend, and then literally within 10 days he had died. So it's incredible though, thinking about the people you meet, the stories you
Mhm.
create and share, just in a fleeting moment, something that was as simple as "Hi, nice to meet you," or "What kind of photography do you do?" I've met some people that I've actually kept in contact with just because of a conversation like that.
Mhm.
So it's pretty neat. And just like the image that I've shared with you with these flamingos, there was a board online that somehow got some of mine, and people would message me and just say, "Can I print this or can I pay you?" And at that point, I'm like, "You don't have to pay me anything. Here's a copy of it. Just I'm glad that you get to enjoy it."
Mhm.
So if I
Yeah.
can do something that makes somebody smile and they want to decorate their home with it in some way, I just see it as a compliment. Again, I'm not a professional anyway. It's not like I attach a livelihood to it.
Mhm.
I think if I had to do this as work, and I've thought about that, and every day this is my drive, I don't think I'd burn out. I'd burn out very quickly because I think that creativity would just
Yeah.
kind of dry up because I would feel like I'm on the clock, or that I had to perform at a certain level, and I probably wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm sitting here listening to, I know we're talking about one specific object, right? The flamingo photo, which stunning, composition's great, colors are great, all of that. But as you're talking, it's interesting the stories that are coming off of that one object, right? Like this kind of connection to other events, or the experience and the people you meet in order to capture that image. And so one of my questions for you was, why do you think humans get such strong attachments to specific objects, whether it's a photo or, I don't know, a piece of jewelry or something like that?
That's a good question. My first initial response would be because it's something that connects to that basic, deep human connection that we have.
Mm.
I think when we think of our senses, for some of us, our smell may be stronger than maybe our taste, or we have very, very keen eyesight, but maybe we don't hear as well, or maybe one ear is a little bit less acute than another.
Mhm.
I think that's how we experience the world. And because of our memories, not that we lose our memory, but because of how much is stored in our mind and how much we can retrieve accurately
Mhm.
things from the past. So every little bit that we've seen and heard, it's in our memory. It's crazy to think that it is. It's literally like that limitless hard drive. It
Mhm.
just, as time goes on, it's more difficult to access those files. So I think sometimes these sensory outputs are ways that we can kind of connect to that. We smell something and we're like, wait a second, that reminds me of something from decades ago.
Mhm.
And it can be something very good, or it can be something very bad. And sometimes we don't even know what the connection is. And other times I know I get this with colognes or scents, and like jasmine, for instance, or a certain type of vanilla, and I'll
Mhm.
smell it and I'll be like, oh gosh, that reminds me of a Yankee Candle, for instance. Or, I smell, what was that? No, it wasn't. I think it was a salted caramel. And it reminds me when I was much younger, and we would go to the store and they had these big bins of like Brock candy that you could buy by the pound. I don't know if they still do stuff like that anymore, but I remember having stuff like that of caramel. And it
Mm.
reminded me, like, gosh, it tastes just like that one. And I've had others since, and I'm like, nope, it's not the same. It's a caramel, but it doesn't quite taste like that one did. And so I think it's a way that we reconnect with the past.
Mhm.
And I think that's why I think oral histories are so important. It doesn't have to be something that is video recorded
Mhm.
with, in triplicate, that has, it'll always be there, for future generations. Whereas an oral history, it's no less important.
Mhm.
Just because it comes in a different version doesn't mean that it's not significant. And it also has its flaws and its different versions. And again, it doesn't devalue or diminish in any way. I think it's kind of like that because as human beings, we crave connection. Even those like myself who enjoy their solitude, we still crave connection. It may be on our terms, but we crave connection. And we want to be seen and heard by other people, especially those we care for.
Mhm.
And when we lose those people as we get older, unfortunately, that's part of being human too, is that we lose people along the way. You don't have to be 80 years old to have experienced loss. I've known people who, through childhood, experienced tremendous loss,
Mhm.
and it shapes who we are, for good and for bad. And I think this is a way for us to kind of, especially those who aren't there anymore, because sometimes if you remember somebody, and I'm speaking again from personal experience, and that's kind of why I'm looking up, because that's kind of how I kind of make that processing in my own mind.
Mhm.
There's people that I've lost, and I can't quite hear their voice as I know that it once sounded. And even if I kind of recreate it in my mind, I know it's not the same anymore. That's not their voice, even though that's kind of what I have left because I don't have a recording or something like that. I know in an instant, if I heard it out of the blue, I could pick it out of a crowd and be like, that's so and so.
Mhm.
But I don't have that voice anymore. There's parts of their features I don't remember. And I think that's again what it is. I think we're trying to connect. And I think that's what makes just the creative arts in general, music, I think is so powerful. For
Mhm.
me, that might be the pinnacle. Even though I know I don't create music or make music, I love photographic, but I love art just in general, and I think all these things fall under that umbrella term of art in some way. But music, I just find just I don't even know I don't know if I could put words to it. It's one of those things I could not quite see myself living without.
Mhm.
I could live without my photography. I couldn't live without music. I'm not just thinking of, oh, well, classical music, the music that's been with us for hundreds of years.
Mhm.
No, I mean, I love ambient music.
Mhm.
So something like from the 60s and 70s onward,
Mhm.
I love the digital aspects of it. I mean, electronic type of music that's been manipulated and created on layers, like what Sean Piquet does. That
Mhm.
stuff blows my mind. I love it, and I guess in a way too, like with my image, it's simplistic. And I don't mean that in a derogatory. No, just it's simple.
Mhm.
There's not much distraction. You know what exactly the focus should be, and it kind of speaks for itself rather than you have to kind of think about, well, what am I looking at and what
Mhm.
do they want me to feel? I want that to kind of be kind of straightforward. So I'm much more minimalistic in terms of my art,
Mhm.
of my photography. And sometimes, when you have 50 branches and you're like, where's the bird at? I'm like, oh, you don't see the eyeball in the corner? Yeah, sometimes that's the reality too, is that, you can't get a clean image oftentimes. You have to work with what you got.
Mhm.
But when you see something like with the flamingos, or you see a bird that's on a beautiful perch, going after a certain colored berry at that
Mhm.
perfect moment, and people just dismiss it like, oh, it's a pretty picture. For those who do this type of photography, no, that person probably had waited years to get that exact moment.
Yes.
And it is a pretty picture, but it's so much more than that.
You're just like perfectly segueing into my next question. And so I'll give you some time to think about it. But if your photograph were to be placed in a museum exhibit about personal histories, what kind of caption would you have paired with your image?
Personal histories.
No pressure.
Hmm. This is a good one. And the title of this image, because I submitted it to three different contests. In
Mhm.
two contests, it did not place. In one contest, it was a finalist.
Oh, wow.
And the image caption had to be 3 words or less. Sometimes these contests are interesting in what they kind of require in their parameters. I opted for one word and I called it flamboyance.
Mm.
And that's kind of like when you have a murder of crows. It's kind of like when you have a collection of some type of animal or bird. They have these very interesting ways of describing them.
Mhm.
And when you have, two or more of a flamingo, they call it a flamboyance. And in my mind, you can see with the flamingos in this one in particular, I also described it as family.
Mm.
You can see that they're at three different life stages, and you can tell by the color of their feathers. So the large one actually is probably the youngest, believe it or not. And you can tell because of the coloration.
Mm.
It's probably well fed. It's It's a strapping young flamingo. But the other two are at different parts of the they're at their developmental stage. So in my mind, again, this could be me just kind of putting this labeling on them and this frame on them, and it may not be the case. But the way I look at it is that I saw them as a family unit, and I think that we're all related in some way or another, but in what way, no idea. But in my mind, I think it's a familial connection. So I saw one as being possibly like the mom and the other like a sister and a brother.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, like, it's a family unit. At that moment in time, it looks like they're almost like coming together, like in a meet and greet kind of thing. Because when they go about doing their thing, they're all very individual. To see a flamingo, if you haven't, you should just kind of Google it and look on YouTube or something and watch them feed. It's the funniest thing. Um, they kind of use their, I don't know what else you would call like the flipper part of their foot, and they kind of like disturb the sediment, and they use their large beak to kind of sift through to collect the little organisms that they need to survive. And when you get to watch them do it, and they kind of it looks like a little dance almost.
Yeah.
So it's quite entertaining to see it done. They had been doing that just before, so they kind of spread out to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then as it was getting dark, it seemed like they were collecting to get together and then kind of moving off to wherever they were going to go and kind of figure out, well, where do we go from here after we just got out of this hurricane the other day. To think that they survived that, it's incredible. And I think they survived as a unit in our general area for about a week to 10 days.
Oh,
And
wow.
then people had been noticing down towards the Everglades that more groups were moving in. So we think that's exactly where they went. By however means they do, they were able to like resituate themselves with their own internal GPS and know that they had to go south.
Wow.
And the consensus was that they believed that they were probably from Mexico or the Yucatan, and that they were moving and trying to go towards Cuba or even further into the Caribbean. So they got back to the Everglades, and after that, I didn't hear too much about them.
That's crazy.
And I would think family. So I would think that that would be the dynamic. And I think for many of us, that is probably one of the stronger concepts that kind of hold us together. That might not
Mm-hmm.
speak to everybody, but for me, in that image in particular, that's kind of what it says to me, at least.
I love that. My final question for you is, do you have any, I know you touched on it a little bit, but do you have any specific tips for aspiring photographers? Maybe people who see themselves as having a career, and like you mentioned, this is something that you wouldn't identify as like your full-time job. Do you have any advice for people who want to go that route? Or what tips do you have for the RimCAD audience before we say goodbye?
I can only speak for myself, and I think what motivates me could be a motivation for other individuals. I also think that when it comes to art in general, it's a very subjective and individual experience. Something that helped me a lot was learning to use a manual mode on a camera rather than the automatic programmed modes in it, like aperture priority or shutter priority. I began with the basic, let the camera do all the work for me, because I was super intimidated by just being able to operate a camera without looking at things and just knowing where buttons are and where to shift, and learning your own camera. That's still a challenge. There's parts of my camera even today with the Sony Alpha system I still don't know about, and I'm okay with that. Really, you want to know what it's capable of and what you feel comfortable for what you do. It doesn't matter if you can do a million and one things. If all you needed for it to do is five things, run those five things well so that you feel confident, and always carry extra batteries. Even recently, I'm like, I went out because I haven't gone out as much lately. I forgot to check, and I'm like, well, I checked the batteries and it looked like they were okay. No sooner did I get out there, I was like on 5%. I said, "You have got to be kidding." But I had another camera, so I was able to swap out a battery, and I had some in there. But typically, I always carry a couple in my pocket, so always carry extra batteries or keep a charger with you. That's pro tip that I always tell myself, like, you need to tell yourself that, and I do. That's like a audible reminder. Learn your camera. Don't get hung up on gear.
Mm.
As much as people in wildlife photography just tout it, don't worry about it. Move through your paces. If you feel like you're a beginner, and don't compare yourself to other people.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel like you're in that state for a year or years, that's okay. If this is something that you enjoy and you're moving forward with, it will come. Everybody works and improves and learns at a different pace and different speed. It does not occur in a vacuum, just like learning. We all kind of move at different paces, and sometimes we hit those plateaus, and some plateaus are longer than others.
Mhm.
Mine, it took a while, but I jumped on the bandwagon very early. I'm going to learn manual, and I'm going to learn it well. And let me tell you something, I still make mistakes. There is hardly a time I don't go out and do something and go, you messed up. That cost you there, and it did
Mhm.
because I did something there, or I thought I could get away. And I'm always having to, because when you're in manual mode in a wildlife type of environment, you have to always be checking settings, especially if you're working in early hours like at dawn,
Mhm.
or you're working in golden hour or approaching blue hour. It changes so rapidly. You have to constantly be adjusting your exposure. So if you're working in manual and you're working in that type of, rather than in an artificial environment, like for portraiture or something in a studio, working in natural light and settings, constantly be checking that. Just don't assume. That's what I did. And I continue to do that. So again, as much as I'm saying it out loud, I'm saying it to myself. Keep checking your settings, especially when the sun is low on the horizon, whether it's coming up or going down. It shifts like every minute. Check your aperture, make it as wide open as possible. Move your ISO. That's the second one you're probably mostly going to move. You need to bump it up. That's like a gain system to actually amplify and add light in essence. It's a signal to gain ratio, signal to noise ratio. So I would say that. I would also say get a mentor.
Mhm.
And I don't mean somebody you would pay.
Mhm.
The people who are my friends, they actually, and they are my friends, they're dear friends, but they're also my mentors. Even now, even though I'm pretty good at what I do, I still go to them all the time. Or even if we're out together, which doesn't happen as much as we used to do. But when we do, I say, well, what'd you do here? What'd you do there? Why are you moving like that? I'm always be willing to learn.
Mhm.
When we stop learning, when we stop asking questions, when we stop being curious, a little bit of that spark just kind of dwindles away. Keep that curiosity. Don't be afraid to ask a question, whether it's in your art or in the classroom. I've been doing this a long time, and I'm always asking questions. It's one of the best things you can do. Rather than always having an answer, I think it's even better to have a question, because more answers actually lead to more questions, believe it or not. It's
Mhm.
almost like a loop. We never quite end with it. So be curious about things, be inquisitive. Even if it's not your genre, say you love portraiture, there's other aspects of photography, like architecture for me. I
Mhm.
love it. It's a whole different way of looking at things too. And just because I know how to operate a camera doesn't mean that I can just go out there and take really good architectural pictures. I can't.
Mhm.
I know the basic mechanics of it, but when I do it, like for astro and stuff, I use the same type of lens. I mean, I still make mistakes. I get things wrong, and especially when it comes to the perspective and things like that, I still get those things goofed up, because when you're working at 12 millimeters or 14 millimeters, I mean, everything starts to stretch, and
Mhm.
you're like, oh, I got it. And you're like, oh, no, I didn't. I completely missed that. And I didn't line things up. You have to be very exact when it comes to stuff like that. With wildlife photography, you have a moment and it's done and over with, which is why you have to be so prepared in a different way.
Mhm.
But when you're doing like a landscape or a long exposure, you have a lot more time to sit there and kind of, work things out. Whereas with wildlife, I mean, you could be sitting there for an hour, nothing happens. All of a sudden, something pops its head up. You go, oh, and then it goes away and it's gone. And you're like, missed my shot. That happens all the time. So learn from other people who do what you do. They don't have to be incredible photographers or artists. I've found that some of those types of individuals, that could be too much of a leap. And I found that when I've worked with individuals like that, there was something missing there. And it could be something on my part, but I felt like I didn't learn much from them. But from photographers who, they might not even be in a way, and I don't mean to be take this in any way other than what I mean is that they've been doing it 30 years,
Mhm.
and they're more of a workman-like, journeyman-like of a photographer, but they get it and they have a good eye. They may not create the most beautiful photographs, but they really understand things and they can pick out really good stuff. I still go to them. So it's not about somebody's like, oh, they're a professional or they're this or that. Sometimes you can just learn a lot from someone who's been doing it for a lot in different ways.
Mhm.
And you're always picking up different things too. I think the more you can be willing to be open and entertaining about something, rather than just saying, well, you know what, they're not published, or they don't have high profile clients. They must not be that good. That's
Hmm.
not the case at all. Be very open-minded when it comes to who could be helpful to you. You just never know. And sometimes the mentors who I've had weren't really they weren't really photographers, but they were editors
Mm.
and they were making the decisions. So they had a heck of an eye because they look at hundreds of thousands of images, but they have no photographic experience. Like if you were to give them a camera, they'd be like, what do you want me to do with this? Yet they're an editor. I mean, I found
Yeah.
that fascinating. I'm like, wait a second, you do this, but you don't have a degree or anything. Like, oh no, I had a degree in marketing or advertising. Yet they have
Wild.
this incredible eye that they've been doing for decades. That I found interesting. So you can learn from all types. I think it'd be good too. I'm sure most of our students are very, very proficient in things like Photoshop and Lightroom.
Hmm.
That's something that has been a struggle for me. I've come a long way. I'd say I'm proficient. I wouldn't say I'm amazing by any stretch, but I'm proficient for what I can do. And I feel pretty comfortable. I know how to mask, I can dodge and burn. I can do a lot of those types of things. And I feel very comfortable, doing gradients and things of this nature. But on the whole, though, when you work in submitting to contests, a lot of them will say you can't do a lot of that type of what they consider manipulation, even though
Mm.
most photographers would say that's not manipulation at all. They would disagree with that. And they would basically, how would you say that, disqualify your entry? But like you can change the white balance to a certain extent, but they want to see the negative, the digital negative,
Oh, wow.
like the DNG file. They're going to compare that to the final version that you submitted in. So unless you're using like the JPEG instead of what we call RAW, the RAW file within the camera, unless you're shooting in JPEG, oftentimes your RAW images are going to be very flat in terms of light because it's such a broad range
Mm.
of um of how many stops of light that your camera and lens can capture. So oftentimes my raw images don't look great. I mean, they can look good, but they won't look as good as a JPEG because there's like a preset profile that the camera will apply to the image.
Okay.
So when you work in those types of things, you really want to get it as correct and final as you can because say you underexposed and then you add like a stop and a half of light, they're
Hmm.
going to say, well, that's not what the image looks like in the camera raw file.
Mm.
And then you're like, you have got to be kidding me. The image is all the same. You haven't
Yeah.
cropped, you know, a lot, or you haven't taken something out of the image. That's always a big no-no. You can't remove something in the image that was there originally, even if it's a stick that's in front of something. Like, come on. Like, nope, this thing has to stay. And by the way, your image still didn't make it. So yeah, you have to get like picture perfect for these contests.
Mhm.
It's a high standard. It really is a high standard. And that's a challenge. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, unless you have a thick skin, I would say don't even bother. Because there's been times where it's happened to me, and Kat knows this because I've even told her, I'm like, it didn't work out. And I'm like, I'm not doing this again. They don't know what they're talking about. And then that same image will win a category in another
Yeah.
contest. So it's one of those things. It's good to have a bit of a thick skin. It's good to have people who you trust their opinion
Hmm.
to give you feedback and guidance. So having a good mentor, again, like what I just said, learning about Photoshop or Lightroom, take additional courses, go on guided workshops, or learn from other people who do portraiture or commercial photography. Get an internship. These are things either RimCAD will help provide through your individual program, oftentimes, or they'll know of an opportunity for you. When I was in school, I didn't have anybody providing anything, unfortunately. So a lot of these opportunities I looked out for myself. So get curious again. If there's an idea, go look and see if there's something in your area that you could do. It's amazing that you might find an internship. They pay you no, they don't pay you money. I've had the interns who I have had who have come to me for recommendation letters or whatever the case. I'd say over 50% of them had come back to me and said that that place hired them. So that was their first job out of college. So it can open up other opportunities or it can give you an experience and something that you can add to your resume that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And employers like that real world experience. So the more that you can get there, the more employable in many ways you become.
Hmm.
And lastly, again, I don't want to be prescriptive, but enjoy what you do. That idea, it's kind of cliche. Actually, it probably just is a cliche. If you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. So go after the things that you enjoy and always just keep learning. If you like commercial photography, for instance, or product photography, and you do that for a decade, and all of a sudden you just kind of hit that brick wall.
Hmm.
You go, this just doesn't do it for me anymore. Do I just give up photography? Oh, don't do that. Go in a different direction. Because I'm sure as you've been moving towards product photography or commercial, something else has been also kind of on the back burner in the back of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Give that a try. Just keep exploring. Anytime you can kind of push beyond your comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
it just makes life better. It makes life, worth living in my mind. And I think that's what art and photography is one part of that puzzle. I think that's what it does for us. So it's a very beautiful thing.
Wow. What a way to conclude. I want to thank you so much for your time today. And the way I'm wrapping this up is my tips to everybody are to get a mentor, do what you love, and stay hydrated, Chris, because
That's true too.
we got to
And
keep
don't
you
forget those
around.
batteries.
And
Remember
don't
those
forget your
batteries.
batteries.
That's right.